As political ideologies shape the way we think, act, and live our lives, it's essential to understand the differences between them. Socialism and democratic values are two such political ideologies that have gained attention in recent times. While both share the goal of creating a just and equal society, their approaches differ significantly. Socialism advocates for a system where the state controls all aspects of the economy, ensuring equal distribution of wealth and resources among citizens. On the other hand, democratic values seek to protect individual liberties and promote a free market economy that fosters competition and innovation. The differences between the two ideologies have sparked debates and discussions on which system is better suited to achieve a just and equal society. This blog post will delve deep into the similarities and differences between socialism and democratic values to help readers understand these ideologies better. By exploring their core principles, we aim to provide readers with a clear understanding of how these ideologies differ and the implications of each on society. 1. Socialism is an economic system. One of the major differences between socialism and democratic values is the economic system they each promote. Socialism is an economic system centered around the ownership and control of the means of production by the state or society as a whole, with the goal of creating a more equal distribution of wealth and resources. In contrast, democratic values prioritize individual freedom and the right to private property, with a market-based economy driven by supply and demand. This fundamental difference in economic approach can lead to stark contrasts in the way the government operates, the role of the individual in society, and the distribution of resources. 2. Democratic values are political principles. In contrast to socialism, democratic values are political principles that prioritize individual rights, freedoms, and the rule of law. While socialism emphasizes shared ownership of the means of production and economic equality, democratic values prioritize the protection of individual liberties and the democratic process. Democratic values ensure that individuals have the right to participate in the political process and to choose their leaders through free and fair elections. Moreover, democratic values emphasize the separation of powers, checks and balances, and the protection of minority rights. In contrast, socialist societies prioritize collective ownership and control of resources, which can sometimes lead to a concentration of power in the hands of the few. In summary, the differences between socialism and democratic values lie in their prioritization of collective versus individual rights and freedoms, and their approach to the distribution of power and resources in society. 3. Socialism advocates for collective ownership. When it comes to the differences between socialism and democratic values, one of the key contrasts is in their views on ownership. Socialism advocates for collective ownership, meaning that resources, means of production, and even housing and land should be owned collectively by the community rather than privately by individuals. This idea is based on the belief that the resources of society should be shared equally to benefit all members rather than just a select few. In contrast, democratic values generally support private ownership of property and resources, with individuals having the right to own and control their possessions. While democratic values do support some collective ownership, such as public resources like parks and roads, they maintain a strong emphasis on individual rights and freedom, highlighting the differences between socialism and democratic values. 4. Democracy supports individual rights. One of the key differences between socialism and democratic values is the extent to which they prioritize individual rights. While socialism emphasizes collective ownership and control of resources, democratic values prioritize individual rights and freedoms. Democracy supports the idea that each individual has the right to express their opinions, beliefs, and values freely without fear of persecution or discrimination. In contrast, socialism emphasizes the collective good over individual freedoms, arguing that individual rights must be subordinated to the needs of the larger community. For example, in a socialist system, the government may restrict individual freedoms in the name of promoting economic equality and social justice. In contrast, democratic values emphasize the importance of protecting individual rights and freedoms, even if doing so means allowing for unequal distributions of wealth and resources. 5. Socialism aims to eliminate inequality. One of the main differences between socialism and democratic values is the aim to eliminate inequality. Socialism views inequality as a fundamental issue that must be addressed through the redistribution of wealth and resources to promote equality among all members of society. On the other hand, democratic values prioritize equal opportunities and fairness, but do not necessarily advocate for complete economic equality. The contrast between these two approaches is reflected in their respective policies and strategies for addressing inequality. Socialism seeks to eliminate inequality through programs such as progressive taxation, social welfare programs, and public ownership of key industries. In contrast, democratic values aim to reduce inequality through policies that promote equal access to education, healthcare, and job opportunities, while advocating for a fair and just economic system that rewards hard work and innovation. Overall, while both socialism and democratic values recognize the importance of addressing inequality, they differ in their approaches and strategies for achieving this goal. 6. Democracy promotes equality and freedom. One of the key differences between socialism and democratic values is their approach to promoting equality and freedom. While socialism advocates for a more equal distribution of wealth and resources, it often comes at the cost of individual freedoms and rights. On the other hand, democracy promotes both equality and freedom, recognizing that they are interconnected and necessary for a just society. Democracy allows for equal representation and participation in government, giving people a voice in decisions that affect their lives. It also protects individual freedoms and rights, such as freedom of speech and expression, which are essential for a healthy democracy. In contrast, socialism may prioritize equality at the expense of individual freedoms, often resulting in authoritarian regimes that suppress dissent and stifle innovation. Ultimately, the differences between socialism and democratic values highlight the importance of balancing equality and freedom in creating a fair and just society. 7. Socialism prioritizes the common good. One of the main differences between socialism and democratic values is the prioritization of the common good. Socialism is a political ideology that prioritizes the common good over individual interest. This means that, under socialism, resources and wealth are distributed equally among all members of society, with the aim of creating a more equal and fair society. Democratic values, on the other hand, prioritize individual freedoms and rights over the common good. While democracy does aim to create a fair and just society, it does so through the protection of individual rights and freedoms rather than through the redistribution of resources and wealth. These contrasting approaches to society encapsulate the fundamental differences between socialism and democratic values. 8. Democracy prioritizes individual interest. One significant difference between socialism and democratic values is the prioritization of individual interest. While socialism emphasizes collective ownership and control of resources, democratic values prioritize individual freedom and autonomy. Democracy recognizes that individuals have different needs, desires, and aspirations, and it seeks to protect and promote these interests through policies and institutions that uphold individual rights and freedoms. In contrast, socialism advocates for the common good of society as a whole and aims to minimize the disparities between individuals by distributing resources and wealth more equally. Ultimately, the differences between socialism and democratic values reflect distinct visions of the role of government in society and the balance between collective welfare and individual rights and freedoms. In conclusion, while socialism and democratic values have some similarities such as the emphasis on social welfare, they are also fundamentally different in terms of their approach to governance and the role of the individual in society. Socialism leans towards a collective approach to decision-making and distribution of resources, whereas democratic values prioritize individual liberty, freedom of choice, and fair representation in government. It is important to understand these differences to make informed decisions about the kind of society we want to live in and the values we want our government to prioritize.